What's up, Mastermind? Welcome back to episode 6 of the mental game Fundamentals. Today I'm going to tell you why thinking is overrated, why your mind is overrated, and why your mind can be a wonderful servant but a terrible master. Or you could also say it can be a great consultant, but it also can be a terrible one. Of course, our mind is capable of doing awesome things, like learning from experience, solving problems, understanding connections, evaluating things, and make plans and decisions. And it can help you become a great poker player, make good decisions at the poker table. At the same time, it's really baffling how much the products of our mind sometimes hinder us from living the life we want to live, from fulfilling our potential. Sometimes we stay indecisive, let the thoughts and doubts paralyze us. We ruminate about the past and the future, or we fight with things that we cannot change or control. Being right in an argument is often more important to us than anything else, or we let prejudice and our past experiences cloud our judgment, even though we know better. And this mode of overthinking, this mode of taking our mind too seriously, is something that is learned. It's not something natural, because if you think of your childhood, or if you think of children who seem really happy to you, it's probably because they are not overthinking, because they are in that mode of just being, just doing things, just enjoying the moment and experiencing the moment. And since this is something that is learned, fortunately, it is also something that can be unlearned. And today we'll talk about how to do that. We will not, unlike other coaching and training methods, try to change your thoughts, but we will instead change the function they have, change the control they have over your behavior, and talk about how to simply make that distinction. When is your mind being a terrible consultant and when is it being a good one? And you will also learn to not take your mind as serious, because sometimes it just comes up with complete random bullshit. And it's even funny sometimes with the stuff that your mind comes up with. So being able to not take it as seriously and even making fun of your own mind maybe can be a really helpful thing. Your thoughts, they are simply not the absolute truth. They are not a completely accurate reflection of reality. Very basic, simple example is the way you think about yourself within a day can completely change. Within one day you can think of yourself as the best poker player in the world, and then you experience a bad session and you might think of yourself as a losing player who should quit poker forever and who will never be winning again. So please be aware, your thoughts are not an accurate reflection of the truth. Your thoughts are not always true. And before we get into making this distinction between a good consultant or a terrible tyrant, I want to make a quick little thought example with you to illustrate how random your mind can be at times and how it's really good at coming up with an infinite amount of reasons and excuses that are not always true, and even more importantly, are not always useful. There can actually be thoughts or opinions or evaluations coming up where you don't even know if they are true, but where you can make that distinction: are they useful or are they not? But yeah, first of all, let's get into that little thought example. I want you to think of 5 reasons of why you should go to the gym. If you want to pick another example, that's totally fine. Doesn't really matter. You could also think of 5 reasons why you should eat healthy, or 5 reasons why you should play poker in the evening. Whatever it is, choose an example and write down 5 reasons to do so. Now what I want you to do is find 5 reasons or excuses why you definitely should not go to the gym. And once you've done that, find one reason for each of these reasons. So why do these excuses, why do these reasons not to go to the gym make sense? For example, you could say, I just feel too lazy today, and the reason behind that would be, well, I'm not coming from a sporty family. Everyone around me is not sporty, so I guess it's completely normal to not go to the gym. I guess that's just me. Or you could think that you might get injured in the gym, that you might feel sore tomorrow, and since you want to play poker in the evening or the next day, you definitely don't want to feel sore. You definitely don't want to risk getting injured. And the reason for that could be that it happened to a friend, and therefore it could definitely happen to you. Or you could tell yourself, well, going to the gym usually takes you about 2 hours, but you only have 1 hour and 45 minutes time right now, so you definitely shouldn't go to. And what this exercise is supposed to illustrate it is that your mind is capable of coming up with an endless list of reasons to either do or not do something. If you think long enough, you will find any amount of reasons for anything that you could or could not do. And depending on your state of mind, depending on how well you slept and so on, the quality of these reasons can be ranging from pretty good and reasonable to absolutely terrible. So on one day you might have slept well, it's early in the morning, you're feeling fresh, and when you're making plans for the day, if you're making decisions for the day, what to do, those decisions are probably going to be pretty good. At the same time, if it's late at night, you're really tired, you're frustrated from the day, your reasons and your excuses and your plans will probably be of pretty poor quality. Or as Fernando said in our last live stream, your mind can be on its A, B or C game. And the quality of your decisions, of your reasons, can vary greatly within a short time frame. And so you should try not to make your decisions, your important behavior, the things you really want to do, dependent on what your mind randomly comes up with at the moment. Instead, you should try to make your decisions based on your goals and your values. And your mind can help you do that. Your mind can help you make those plans and lay out a path of how to go after those goals and values. But you can learn to not let it hinder you or block you or paralyze you as often on that way. Now, before we get into the next exercise, I quickly want to talk about why our mind is so good at coming up with reasons and excuses. And that is for a big part because we get rewarded for that. If you, for example, cancel a meeting with friends and you give a reason, of course, they are more likely to understand and say that's okay. So we are rewarded, we are trained to giving reasons and excuses. The problem with that is that often these reasons are just a random product of your mind. And we are actually, a very interesting point that studies have shown, that we are actually pretty bad at justifying our own behavior, of giving reasons for our behavior. To stick with the example of canceling a meeting with friends, you might say, I just don't have the time. And you might tell yourself at the time that this is really true, that it's too short of a time window, that you might get stressed, when in reality, if you would go to meet your friends anyway, you would enjoy yourself, you would maybe stay a little shorter, but it would still be the right thing to do. And the real reason behind canceling that meeting might be because you don't feel well, because you don't feel like socializing, because maybe you have some social anxiety or there's something really stressing you out at the moment. There's something stressful on your mind, but you're giving that excuse or that reason, I don't have the time. And your friends are likely to say, yeah, that's fine. They are likely to understand and therefore reward you for giving that reason. And I also want to quickly explain why we're not trying to change your thoughts, but instead only change the control they have over your behavior. That's because our mind works in a way where learning that thought B is better than having thought A does not replace that bad thought A. For example, if you think of yourself as a losing player, as somebody who has no confidence, who always expects the worst at the table, learning to have more confident thoughts, learning to think of yourself as a better poker player does not erase that thought of being a bad poker player. They will instead start conflicting with each other. There will be that inner conflict between, am I a good poker player or am I not? And at some days you will feel A and at some days you will feel B, but that negative thought will not be erased. And so trying to change your thoughts and not succeeding and feeling like, oh, damn it, I should be positive, I should be optimistic, I really have to change my thoughts, can actually be even more frustrating because it is very unlikely to succeed. And that inner conflict can be another source of stress, but the conflict between the positive and the negative thoughts. And another reason why we should not try to change thoughts is because their function and their how true they are can change over time or can be different in different contexts. For example, being critical of oneself is for many people is a big problem most of the time. But of course, in some situations, being critical of oneself is extremely helpful. If you're trying to fix a poker league, if you're trying to fix a problem in your life, having a certain amount of criticism for yourself can be extremely important and helpful. Our society and especially popular self-help culture, they just love to come up with those really stupid, oversimplified black and white rules and sayings like winners never quit, boys don't cry, always think positive, and so on and so on. And just like thoughts, these rules, they can be helpful sometimes, but at other times they can be really harmful as well. For example, that mindset of keep grinding, never quit. This can be helpful if you're going through a tough time, through a downswing in poker, and you love poker and it's a way to support your family. Then, of course, keep on grinding is a useful mindset. But if you keep grinding at a job that you absolutely hate and that maybe even goes against your values, is not bringing you closer to your goals, but is actually the exact opposite of your values and your goals, then, of course, keeping on grinding would be really harmful for you. And what we're trying to achieve is to get into that state where you don't need oversimplified rules, where you're flexible enough, where you're intelligent enough, where you're wise and experienced enough to make your own decisions, where you don't need to rely on oversimplified rules, where you can realize at some situations a certain thought or rule is helpful, and in other situations the same rule is absolutely terrible. And how are we going to train that? By training the state of diffusion. Diffusion is a psychological term and basically means distancing yourself from your thoughts in a healthy way. Not taking your mind so super serious. It doesn't mean not to think at all, but instead to observe your thoughts. Look at them from a certain distance or from an observer's perspective, and then be flexible about selecting the thoughts that you would like to use and the ones you don't want to use. Make that distinction between the helpful ones and the unhelpful ones. Make that distinction between when your mind is being a good consultant or when it's being a terrible tyrant. One way to practice this is through meditation, which we will do in future videos. But first of all, I want to get you thinking about it. I will give you a written exercise, which will help you find situations in your everyday life where your mind might be taking over, where you might be overthinking, where you're overanalyzing and therefore not taking action. So a situation where your mind is blocking you, where it's not well suited for the job. But at the same time, also look for those situations where the mind is perfectly suited for the job, where you should be thinking, where you should be analyzing, to realize there are situations where you can think A and do B, but there are also situations where your mind is helpful, where you will think A and actually do A. What I want you to do in this exercise is to think of 3 examples each where your mind either was helpful or where it wasn't, where it was well suited for the job or where it wasn't. Describe the situation or the problem. It doesn't have to be a problem. It could also be a situation that you were trying to enjoy. Describe the situation. What comment or what analysis or what thoughts was your mind coming up at the time with? What did it tell you to do? And Was it helpful? What was the result when you listened to your mind? To make one example each, if you're analyzing hands, if you're doing a session review, of course, listening to your mind is a great idea. It will help you make good conclusions, will improve your game, will help you make better decisions in the future. If, on the other hand, you are spending time with your friends, with your family, or with your partner, and there's poker analysis on your mind, if you're thinking about hands or bad beats or future hands to come, then of course it will be a harmful thing. If your mind is telling you, come on, let's think about some poker hands while you're spending time with your family, of course that won't be a good thing. And you want to do the exact opposite of what your mind is telling you. While in the example of the hand analysis, you want to stay on the path, you want to do what your mind is telling you, and in that friends and family example, you want to do the exact opposite. You can do this exercise once with those 3 examples, but I think even more effective is to do it regularly as a type of diary exercise, which will regularly remind you of those situations and which will make it more likely that in the heat of the moment, that when these over-analysis moments come up, that you will actually become aware of them. And this will make it, of course, more likely that you take that observer's perspective where you decide between a helpful and an unhelpful thought. That's it for this exercise. As always, you can write into the comments or in the Discord channel what you did in this exercise, how it helped you, what you thought of it, and if you have any questions about it. Thank you for tuning in. See you in the next video.